The world is going to hell in a handbasket, but that's okay because the Met Gala is coming up and that's something to look forward to. Plus, it's a chance for us to talk more about how fashion is influenced not only by African Americans, but from Black and African culture in general. Welcome back to another episode of Fashion Meets History with Domii Davis. We are going to be talking about the Met Gala. The 2026 theme is costume art, and following the 2025 theme, super fine, tailoring Black style, the 2026 costume art theme also features several Black co-chairs. Beyonce Giselle Knowles Carter, the Queen Bee, and Venus Williams. While the 2025 themes explored dandyism and its importance throughout fashion, but specifically American fashion, and how relevant African American creativity is to fashion at large, I have a distinct feeling the 2026 red carpet will give us a different side of the same coin, so to speak. But even though we need context for the 2026 and 2025 Met Gala themes, I don't want to talk about modern Met Galas. I want to talk about the first Met Gala, not the original Met Gala that Eleanor Lambert began in the 1940s, but the first Met Gala where we actually started getting themes. And that started in 1973. And the theme featured no one less than Cristobal Balenciaga. If you're at all interested in fashion and history, you know that during World War II, up-and-coming fashion houses like Balenciaga were shut down because of the German takeover in Paris. And you also know, following the war's end, designers like Balenciaga and Christian Dior were responsible for restoring fashion to its glory days. And that's where we get the famous new look that Dior inspired. Well, we always give Christian his credit, but we don't always shout out Cristobal. So it's very fitting that the first Met Gala was actually a nod to him. The reason why Balenciaga was a perfect match to honor the first Met Gala theme is because most of his designs featured a nod to Spanish style and Spanish culture, which oftentimes was very theatrical and dramatic in style. This is extremely important when we're talking about where fashion was in the early 70s. Where we were starting to move away from the modernized new look that Dior created, which was a nod and modernized version of Victorian era styles, to a less feminine almost and more grotesque type of style and design. Not to mention, Diana Vreeland, who was Vogue's editor-in-chief at the time, wanted to honor Balenciaga's long legacy because he passed away the year before in 1972. Balenciaga was known in the fashion world for creating exquisite silhouettes. How he cut his silhouettes, as we mentioned before, was completely different from the soft feminine styles that we think of when we think about the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s. Balenciaga loved to play around with shapes and patterns and dimension, which, when we think about the Met Gala, and when we think about the 2026 Met Gala, costume art are perfect criteria and design ideas to pull from. We've talked a little bit about why Cristobal Balenciaga was honored and why Cristobal Balenciaga was important and famous in fashion overall, but we haven't talked about where Cristobal Balenciaga drew his inspiration from. And that answer is simple: Spain. Balenciaga, if the name doesn't give it away itself, was of Spanish origin, and most all of his work paid homage to his heritage and his homeland. Spanish fashion is known for its use of colors. They're usually bright and vibrant, and often not one solid color, but a mix of colors that spoke to each other and kind of blended and told a story. Spanish fashion is also known for its use of textiles, often blending aesthetics from different cultures. Because geographically, when we think about where Spain is on a map and how Spain influenced the world in the age of exploration, Spain touched a lot of cultures. Spain sits in the crux of the Mediterranean and has natural influences there. There are also the influences of Europe, especially in the age of exploration and before, those medieval and Renaissance vibes of the aristocracies of Europe. not to mention the influences of places like Africa and the Middle East, which is where I really want to dive in. Most all of us have heard the term Moors. Who or what are Moors? Well, the Moors are a group of people who typically came from North Africa, West Africa, or the Middle East. The Moors are distinct because in a time where the Christian religion, mainly Catholicism, was dominating Europe through the Holy Roman Empire, the Moors were Muslim and held on to their faith. Because the Moors came from a different cultural region, they had a lot of different cultural practices, like hygiene. If you go back, there's a great video that I did about Zarab, a Moorish man who brought hygiene to Spain, or basically brought hygiene to Europe. Moorish influencers, if we will, like Zarab, are part of the reason why Spanish culture is so influential and dominant, and part of the reason why those influences stuck out in Balenciaga's designs. The Moors not only brought modern hygiene practices like bathing and creating seasonal wardrobes, they also brought different techniques for making clothes, as well as different design elements and fabrics. A lot of intricate embroidery and detail that you think of when you see a matador are influenced distinctly by the fashion influences that the Moors brought to Spain. There are also other signature garments, like distinct types of hoop skirts and structured capes, that can specifically be identified by their Moorish origins. Those specific types of styles, like the matador uniform, can be found throughout Cristobal Balenciaga's scope of work, not only from the cut and the style of the matador, but also from the use of embroidery and sequins and boleros. Moorish influence on Spanish style blended a lot of the tradition and the culture, not only from their Muslim faith, but also from their homes in North Africa, West Africa, and the Middle East, outside of religion. Those cultures and traditions were blended with the fashion culture of the Spanish nobility to create a unique and elaborate style. The matador is just one example of the collaboration between Black and brown creativity and its influences in Europe, and their origins are often forgotten and passed off as European intellectual property, and that's simply not the case. While designers like Balenciaga were influenced and created their own works of art that are works of art, the origins and the history points to a larger story that encapsulates different variations of cultures coming together and blending to create something unique. There are some people who last year for the 2025 Met Gala, and I'm sure this year for the 2026 Met Gala, will say that the Met Gala has gone woke and that Black and brown people, specifically Black people, are co-opting and everything is in Black. I'm here to tell you everything indeed is colored, okay? All right? It is. Hardy D. Everything. It's some little sauce that's put on it. And I think that Vogue and the Met Gala are doing great work and bringing that history to light, because it's about paying homage to the history of those origins and spreading the creativity. That's all I have for you today. Stay tuned for more Fashion Meets History with Domii Davis.